Welcome to HardScript.
Help me reach 5,000 subscribers. Support the video with a like and leave your thoughts in the comments. I need 30 days alone to think, she announced, standing in the middle of our living room like a judge delivering a sentence. Her arms were folded, chin raised, her tone rehearsed. I didn't argue. I didn't ask questions. I didn't beg. I just nodded, walked upstairs, and pulled the suitcase from the closet. If she wanted 30 days, I'd give her 30. I helped her pack. She thought I'd resist. She thought I'd panic, cling, maybe plead for her to stay. Instead, I folded her clothes neatly, zipped the suitcase shut, and carried it to the door. Her confidence cracked for just a moment when she realized I wasn't fighting her. But she forced a smile, kissed me on the cheek, and said she'd be back when her mind was clear. I simply told her to take all the time she needed. The door closed behind her, and for the first time in months, the house felt quiet. Not tense, not suffocating, just quiet. I sat in that silence and felt something unexpected, relief. She thought freedom was hers for the taking. What she didn't realize was that she had just handed it to me. The first few days, I filled the time with everything I had put on hold. The gym, late nights at the office, dinners with friends I hadn't seen in months. I moved through the city like a man unchained, rediscovering myself in every small detail. The weight I'd carried for years was gone. But on day 10, my phone buzzed. Her name lit up the screen. First it was a short text, "Hey." Then another, "How are you?" By evening, she called. Her voice was lighter than usual, trying to mask the nerves underneath. She asked how I'd been, if I missed her, if I'd thought about her at night. I kept my tone calm, detached. I told her I'd been busy, that I was fine. She laughed nervously, saying it felt strange not to hear from me. Strange that I hadn't reached out. That was when I knew the truth. She hadn't expected me to let her go so easily. She thought 30 days apart would make me desperate, that I'd chase her, beg her back. Instead, she was the one reaching out, her voice trembling as she whispered my name like she needed to hear it just to breathe. And in that moment, I understood. She asked for 30 days away. But freedom only works one way, and I wasn't giving mine back. By day 12, her messages grew longer. At first, they were casual, updates about her morning run, a funny story about the coffee shop near her rental. But by the evening, the tone had shifted. She asked if I was sleeping well, if the house felt empty without her. I let the phone buzz on the table while I finished my workout. When I finally replied, my answer was short. All good. She called that night. Her voice cracked around the edges as she told me she had been thinking about us. She said space was harder than she imagined, that maybe 30 days was too long. I kept my responses measured, calm. I told her to take the time she needed, that I wasn't in a rush. The silence that followed on her end was heavy, filled with the realization that I wasn't waiting by the window for her return. The next few days, I leaned fully into my own rhythm. Work, gym, dinners out. I started running again, something I hadn't done in years. Friends noticed the difference in me. They said I looked lighter, sharper, more alive. And for the first time in a long time, I believed them. By day 15, she wasn't asking about the house anymore. She was asking about me, who I was with, where I was going, why I hadn't called her back sooner. The confidence she carried when she packed her suitcase was gone. In its place was doubt, fear, and the quiet desperation of someone who realized the ground was shifting under her feet. On day 17, she showed up unannounced. I pulled into the driveway to see her car parked outside. She stood by the front door, arms crossed, eyes searching my face the moment I stepped out. She smiled like she was trying to play it cool, but her voice betrayed her when she said she missed me. I unlocked the door, let her inside, and noticed how quickly she slipped back into old habits, checking the kitchen, commenting on the laundry, trying to reclaim a space she had willingly left behind. That night, as she sat on the couch staring at me, I realized the truth. She hadn't wanted 30 days to think. She wanted 30 days to test me, to see if she still held the same power she once flaunted. But the test had failed. By day 10, she was already calling my name. By day 17, she was at my door. And I knew then, freedom wasn't something I'd ever hand back. She lingered in the house as if 30 days had never been spoken. At first, she claimed she just wanted to pick up a few things she'd forgotten. Then she said she wanted to cook dinner, that it felt strange eating alone. I watched her move through the kitchen like she was trying to reattach herself to a life that had already cut her loose. I didn't stop her, but I didn't encourage her either. I let her exist in the silence she had created. That evening, she set 2 plates on the table and sat across from me. Her eyes kept darting up, searching my face for something familiar, some spark of the man who used to orbit around her. But I ate calmly, thanked her for the food, and cleared my plate without conversation. She frowned, forced a smile, and asked if I wanted to watch a movie after. I shook my head, told her I had an early morning. Her shoulders dropped, and for the first time, I saw defeat flicker in her eyes. By day 20, she wasn't pretending anymore. She sat beside me on the couch, her hand brushing against mine, her voice soft as she admitted she hated being apart. She said the space made her realize what she had taken for granted. I listened, steady and silent. I didn't argue, didn't comfort, didn't validate. I let her words hang in the air until she grew uncomfortable with the weight of them. On day 22, she tried another tactic. She dressed up, hair perfect, perfume heavy, and asked if I wanted to go out with her, just the 2 of us. I told her I already had plans. She froze, stunned, then asked with who. I met her eyes and answered with a single word: friends. That word hit harder than any long explanation. She didn't like the idea of me having a life that no longer revolved around her. By day 25, she had stopped teasing, stopped bargaining. Her pride had collapsed into pleading. She sat on the edge of the bed one night, tears streaking her face, whispering that she didn't want to lose me. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't move toward her. I simply said she had made her choice when she walked out with that suitcase. She had asked for 30 days of freedom, but by day 10, she was calling my name. By day 25, she was begging. And I knew the truth. Freedom only worked one way. Mine was permanent. Hers was over. By day 27, the shift was undeniable. She no longer carried herself like the woman who once announced she needed space. That version of her had vanished. What sat across from me now was someone raw, fragile, stripped of the control she thought she had. She hovered around the house like a guest overstaying her welcome, waiting for me to break the silence. I didn't. I stayed composed, steady, moving through my routines like she wasn't even there. That evening, she cooked again, though this time there was no pride in it. She set the plate in front of me quietly, almost like an offering. As I ate, she sat with folded hands, watching me. Then, in a trembling voice, she said the 30 days had been a mistake. She said she thought she needed time to figure out her feelings, but the truth was she just wanted to see if I would chase her. She admitted it was a test I was never meant to pass, because in her mind, failing would have proven how much I wanted her. I let her words spill out while I finished the meal. When she finally fell silent, I set down my fork, looked at her, and simply nodded. No anger, no reaction, just acknowledgement. That was all I gave her. She broke into tears at the table, covering her face with her hands. I stood, carried my plate to the sink, and left her sobbing in the kitchen. By day 28, she was unraveling. She texted me while I was at work, long, desperate paragraphs about memories, about how she wanted to fix things, about how she couldn't sleep without me beside her. I read them, but I didn't reply. That silence said more than anything I could write. That night, she tried to climb into my bed again. She pressed her face into my shoulder, whispered that she missed me, that she would never ask for space again. I stayed still, eyes closed, giving her nothing. After a while, she turned away, curling up on her side, quietly crying into the pillow. And that was the moment I knew the 30 days had backfired completely. She thought time apart would keep her in control. Instead, it exposed the truth. I didn't need her to breathe. I didn't need her to feel alive. She had asked for freedom, and I had discovered it too. Only mine wasn't temporary. Hers had already run out. Day 29 began with silence heavier than any argument we had ever had. She moved around the kitchen carefully, setting out breakfast like we were strangers sharing a rented space. Her eyes followed me with a mix of guilt and fear, but she said nothing. I ate in silence, left my plate in the sink, and grabbed my keys. She finally spoke as I reached the door. Her voice was soft, almost breaking, as she asked if we could talk later that night. I told her calmly that I wasn't sure I'd be home. I spent that evening at the gym, then drove aimlessly through the city. The roads stretched out like freedom, each mile pulling me further away from the cage she had built around us. When I finally pulled back into the driveway, her car was still there. The lights in the house glowed dim, a reminder that she was waiting. She sat on the couch when I walked in, mascara smudged, her hands clutched together like she was holding herself together. She looked up at me, eyes swollen, and whispered that she was sorry. She said she should never have asked for 30 days. She admitted it wasn't about space or clarity, it was about control. She thought I would panic, thought I would fight to prove my devotion, thought I would chase. Instead, I had let her go. And now she was the one chasing. I stood there, silent, letting her spill every confession. She begged me to listen, begged me to understand, begged me not to give up on her. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't comfort her. I simply watched as she unraveled under the weight of her own words. That night, she tried to reach for me in bed again. She curled into me, desperate, whispering promises she never would have spoken weeks earlier. Promises to change, to be different, to give what she had always withheld. I lay still, unmoved. My silence was the answer she feared most. By the morning of day 30, the roles were no longer blurred. She had wanted freedom, and she discovered too late that it only worked one way. She gave me space, and I filled it with life again. She came back to reclaim me, but she found nothing left to hold. The countdown she had started was over. The 30 days were up, and so was she. Day 30 arrived like a deadline she never expected to meet. I woke early, showered, and dressed as if it were any other morning. She sat at the kitchen table, hands wrapped around a mug she hadn't touched, her eyes red from another sleepless night. She looked up at me, waiting for me to speak first, but I didn't. I poured my coffee, checked my phone, and moved with the calm precision of a man who had already made up his mind. Finally, she broke the silence. Her voice was strained as she said she wasn't ready for the 30 days to be over. She begged for more time, not apart this time, but together. She said she couldn't stand the thought of me slipping away. Her words tumbled out in a rush, tripping over themselves, the voice of someone who knew she had lost her grip. I sat across from her, sipping my coffee, letting her desperation hang in the air. Then I said it plainly. She asked for 30 days, and she got them. The problem was, I had used that time better than she had. I had rediscovered myself. And now, I had no desire to return to the man who once begged for scraps of her attention. She started crying openly then, reaching across the table, her fingers trembling as they brushed the edge of my hand. But I didn't move toward her. I didn't offer comfort. I let her sit in the emptiness she had created. That evening, she tried one last time. She put on the same dress she wore on our first date, styled her hair the same way, even played the same song we had danced to years ago. She stood in the living room, smiling through her tears, and whispered my name like it was a prayer. I looked at her, steady, detached, and said nothing. I walked past her, upstairs, leaving her standing alone in the flicker of candlelight. By the end of day 30, the truth was undeniable. She had asked for freedom, but she never expected me to taste it. She thought 30 days apart would prove my devotion, but it proved the opposite. It proved I could live without her, and live better. She asked for 30 days away. By day 10, she was already calling my name. By day 30, she was begging, and I was already gone. The 30 days had ended, but she wouldn't accept it. She lingered in the house like a shadow, as if refusing to leave might undo what had already happened. Every move she made was drenched in desperation, tidying the rooms, cooking meals I never asked for, trailing me from one space to the next like proximity alone might rebuild what she destroyed. One night, I came home late. She was waiting by the door, her eyes swollen, her voice trembling as she asked if we could talk. I hung my jacket, slipped off my shoes, and walked past her without a word. She followed me into the living room, her voice breaking as she said she didn't recognize me anymore. I looked at her once, calm and cold, and told her that was the point. I wasn't the man she had dismissed, the man who used to orbit around her moods. That version of me no longer existed. By day 32, her family started calling. I overheard her whispering on the phone, telling her sister that she was scared, that I wasn't reacting, that she felt invisible. She didn't admit what she had done, how she had demanded 30 days to herself, how she thought I'd crumble in her absence. Instead, she painted herself as the one abandoned. I didn't correct her. Lies eventually choke those who speak them. That weekend, she staged one more performance. Candles lit, wine poured, music low, the illusion of romance carefully arranged. She wore the same robe she once used as leverage, the same smile that used to toy with me. but her hands trembled when she reached out. Her voice cracked when she whispered my name. I sat across from her, unblinking, my silence louder than any refusal. After a long, unbearable pause, she broke into sobs, collapsing against the table like she had finally realized the truth. By day 35, she was unrecognizable. The woman who once demanded space, who believed she held all the power, was now begging for attention in fragments. She lingered at doorways, left notes on my desk, sent messages that grew longer and more desperate each day. And I gave her nothing, because I had discovered something in those 30 days that she never expected. Freedom, peace, strength. She thought time apart would prove my dependence. Instead, it proved her irrelevance. And now, every tear she shed was proof that she finally understood. Freedom only worked one way. Mine was permanent. Hers was gone. By day 38, the desperation in her eyes was impossible to disguise. She moved around the house like a stranger in her own life, clinging to routines that no longer involved me. She asked if I wanted coffee in the morning, if I needed anything from the store, if we could sit together in the evening. I responded with politeness, but nothing more. Each short answer was another reminder that the space she demanded had swallowed her whole. That evening, she sat across from me at the dining table, hands trembling as she admitted she was wrong. She said she thought 30 days apart would make her appreciate what we had, that she believed space would bring clarity. But her voice broke as she confessed that clarity only showed her how much I had slipped away. She begged me to believe her, to give her another chance. I looked at her calmly and told her that the man she thought she could leave behind had disappeared during those 30 days. Her tears came fast, her body shaking as she reached for my hand. For the first time, I saw the collapse of her pride, the complete shattering of the control she once flaunted. But I didn't return the gesture. I let her hand hover in the air, unanswered, until she pulled it back like it had touched fire. By day 40, she was calling me constantly while I was at work. If I didn't answer, the messages poured in, paragraphs of apologies, declarations of love, promises she had never made before. I read them, but I didn't respond. My silence became the final truth she couldn't escape. That weekend, she tried to corner me. She stood in the hallway, blocking my path, her eyes wide with panic as she said she couldn't lose me. She promised to be different, promised to erase the 30 days like they never happened. I stepped around her without a word, my calm rejection cutting deeper than any argument could. That night, I heard her crying again, louder this time, broken sobs that echoed through the walls. Once, those sounds would have pulled me in, made me comfort her, made me fight for her. But now, they were just confirmation. She had asked for freedom, but she never expected me to find it too. And as I lay in the dark, listening, I knew the truth was irreversible. She had set the clock on our marriage the moment she walked out with that suitcase. And by day 30, it had already run out. By day 43, she had stopped pretending altogether. The woman who once demanded 30 days away was now orbiting me like a shadow, desperate for any scrap of acknowledgement. She trailed behind me through the house, asking questions she didn't want the answers to. Where I was going, who I was seeing, why I wasn't looking at her the way I used to. I answered each one with silence or a clipped word. My detachment cut deeper than shouting ever could. That evening, she cornered me again in the kitchen. Her hands shook as she admitted she was terrified. She said the 30 days had destroyed her, that she thought she was strong enough to stand alone, but instead she felt like she was drowning. She asked if I hated her. I looked at her calmly and told her the truth. I felt nothing. That word, nothing, shattered her more than anger ever would. The next day, her mother called me. She said my wife had been crying on the phone, saying she was scared of losing me forever. I listened politely, but I didn't explain. This wasn't something that could be patched up with family interference. This was the consequence of her own choices. By day 45, she was desperate enough to try one final tactic. She dressed up, did her makeup, tried to look like the woman I first fell for. She approached me slowly, her voice trembling as she said she wanted to be close again. She touched my arm, whispered my name, begged me to let her back in. I didn't push her away. I didn't yell. I simply stepped back, leaving her hand suspended in the air, unanswered. The look on her face told me she finally understood. It was over. That night, I packed a small bag. I didn't announce it, didn't explain. I left quietly, locking the door behind me while she slept upstairs. By the time she woke, I was gone. Her messages came quickly. First confusion, then panic, then despair. She said she would do anything, that she couldn't live without me, that she was begging now for the life she once threw away. But I didn't answer, because the truth had been written since day 10, when she called my name. She thought she was testing me, but all she did was set me free. She asked for 30 days of freedom. By day 45, she finally realized that freedom only worked one way. Mine was permanent. Hers was gone. Day 50 arrived, though she had stopped counting long before. For her, the 30 days stretched into a blur of panic, tears, and regret. For me, it was the opposite. Each day sharpened me, stripped away the weakness she once fed on, and left behind someone she no longer recognized. I had moved into a new apartment by then, clean walls, quiet halls, and not a single trace of her. The silence here wasn't heavy, it was peaceful. It was mine. I woke early, worked out, focused on my career, and reconnected with the version of myself I had abandoned to chase her approval. Every morning felt lighter than the one before. She didn't stop reaching out. Her calls filled my voicemail, her messages stacked one after another. Some were angry, some were pleading, most were desperate. She begged me to remember the life we built, to give her one last chance, to come back and start over. But I never responded. She had demanded space, and now she was drowning in it. Friends told me they saw her around town. They said she looked thinner, quieter, always checking her phone like she was waiting for something that never came. She had told them I was being cruel, that I had abandoned her. But the truth was simpler. She had asked for 30 days away, and I had given them to her. She just hadn't expected that 30 days would be long enough for me to realize I didn't need her at all. The last time I saw her was by accident. She was at the grocery store, standing in the aisle with her cart, her eyes hollow. When she saw me, her face lit up for a second, like she thought fate had given her one more chance. She whispered my name, almost a plea. I nodded once, calm, and walked past her without slowing down. That single moment told her everything she needed to know. She asked for freedom, thinking it was a game she controlled. But freedom only worked one way. She discovered that too late, when the silence she once wielded became the silence that consumed her. By day 50, she was begging for what she once threw away. And I was gone, forever beyond her reach. Real men don't explode. They exit. Subscribe for more power stories.